So we'll get started here. So Jeff, you grew up outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Then you went on to wrestle for the University of Michigan. Most people who know you, I think they know that about you. But let's back up a little bit. How did you get your start in the sport of wrestling?
Yeah, great question. Every time I meet a wrestler, no matter, I've asked Jordan Burroughs this, I've asked Helen Morales this, I ask every single one of our Beat the Streets kids, how'd you get into the sport? And that's my informal survey, right? It's my informal study. For a couple of reasons. One, I think it's critical to know so that we know where we put our marketing energy in wrestling. And then, right, whether we're putting that energy into flyers, posters, waivers, or recruiting days, or not waivers, but so I got my start in wrestling. My family, as most of us were, was a family of wrestlers. My father wrestled a couple years in high school, loved it. Says he didn't have the success that he wanted, but he was all in on it. My uncles were some of the more successful wrestlers out of our town growing up, and they were a big part of running the youth club. And so my brother joined the team when he was 5. I was 3.5, and I was going to wrestling practice. And of course, as a kid with a lot of energy, I was like, if I'm going to be here, why can't I do this anyway? So I started wrestling at 3.5 years old.
Gotcha. So yeah, I think, right, it's great how you said that. Trying to figure out, when trying to market the sport of wrestling, both you and I fell into it the same way. It was hereditary, right? Had family members or an older brother. Case in point, my brother's a year and a half older, just like you. So that's cool. And I never knew that. So yeah, another connection for us.
Yeah.
So we talk about like your start in the sport, right? Who are some of the most influential coaches you had as a wrestler, and when you think of them, the why they're influential, and are there any times when, since you've transitioned to being a coach, that you've thought back to yourself and said, man, I remember when, Joe McFarland or Sean Bormet or whoever did the same thing, man, I just did what they did. Sort of like when someone becomes a parent for the first time and all of a sudden you recognize, you're doing something that your parents did. Do you see parts of your influential coaches in you?
Oh yeah, every day you have to. I think if we're not passing on the lessons that we learn by great coaches and continuing to expand and innovate on those, I think that we're doing a disservice to the sport of wrestling and the kids that we that we work with and we're mentoring. And I think that that's something too that I believe jiu-jitsu does a great job of is falling into this lineage, and I think wrestling's becoming stronger at that. We're recognizing the history of our sport through National Wrestling Hall of Fame and a lot of like local initiatives that are really honoring that. Flo's been putting out a bunch of good stuff on that recently, as is you guys. So for me, 2 coaches stand out, right? I think that coming up as a younger coach, I always questioned why things were done a certain way. And I saw a lot of repetition of what was done before, which can be good sometimes, but it also can stagnate if you're not innovating. So I always kind of drove myself to innovate. But one of the major questions I had when I was coaching at Stevens Tech, I think I was my 5th year coaching. I coached with Mike Clayton, who's one of your guys' staff members, building an education program. And so one thing I never fully understood was, what do you say to an athlete after loss? And they come off the mat, you want to be there for them, you want to say something, you want to help them overcome this. A year ago, probably today, right around this time, I went home after the NCAAs and I had breakfast with my old coach. And we're sitting there, me, Jeff Verne, his wife, my wife, in a little cafe in Dexter, Michigan, tiny little one stoplight town. And I remember the things that Jeff did, right? I remember those more than anything. And so I remember going to the state tournament and I didn't have money for lunch. And he gave me $20 and said, go get whatever you need. And for him, it was probably something tiny. But for me, that's a moment that stood out in my mind forever, right? His objective, no matter what his situation was to take care of my needs. It was to take care of me. It was to be there for me. And so I was asking Jeff about this question I had. And so I said, what do you say to an athlete after loss? And Jeff said, nothing. You just be there. And that was kind of the cherry on the top of like all of these things I had been trying to discover while learning how to coach. And there was a culminating moment. At the same time, Jeff told me that he said, I have a little problem. And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Well, I've got some cancer, and it's terminal, but we're going to get through it." Jeff passed away a couple of months later, and I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to share that story at his funeral. But Jeff was a huge mentor for me, and a lot of the programs that we build now at Beat the Streets, like Emma Randall's doing with the Sport US Wrestling Foundation, we've been able to build out a Gym Class Heroes program, where one thing that Jeff did for me was my job in the spring, I was a USA Wrestling official. And Friday night, I had to be there at 5 o'clock. I had to have an appearance. I had to show up on time. I had to negotiate for my pay. I had to manage a stressful situation, right? Everything that you need to be ready for a career. My first job was in wrestling, and my coach gave me that job. And so now we've been intentionally designing our programming through Beat the Streets on that same model. And it was Emma's innovation. She just made it click that, oh my gosh, I got those same things from my coach. So instead of hiring a referee from out of the city, we're training our kids. Instead of hiring somebody to go and recruit at their schools, that's me or you or somebody else that loves wrestling. No, we're hiring the kids. And so we're taking and we're paying them $15 an hour to go around, recruit at their school. They're doing the gym classes. I think we delivered 15 of these this year, where we were paying the kids as a pilot program in New York. We're going to scale that to the rest of the country. And so those same soft skills that I got from my coach in my first wrestling situation, my first job, those are things that we're now being intentional about giving to the kids. So I look back at that, and he was a huge influence on me. Why? Because of the time that he spent with me, the time that he spent with my team, and just being a really solid rock and consistent in our lives over 6 or 7 years. And even then, 15 years when I go back and have lunch with him, and it kind of comes full circle. So, yeah, that's number one who comes to mind.
That's awesome.
Do you want number? Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead. And I'll tell you number two. Sorry again to everybody watching. I've got a little sniffles and stuff going on. Don't worry, it's not digitally contagious. Yeah, Jeff was really impactful, and as I said, he passed away this year, but he left a huge impact and a legacy that's going to continue on. And I think it's important for us to live those lessons and to pass them on from any coach, and any coach that did something to actually change our lives. Right? I believe that the inspiration that was created from me having that experience as a young referee and my first job, I believe it probably put something in the back of my mind. And oh my gosh, you can make a career in wrestling.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? And to know 20 years later, 15 years later, here you are. No, that's great. All right, so you gave us one. You still got to give us the second, Coach.
Yeah. So this story is a little different. After I left the tutelage of Coach Vern, I got to college, and I started getting caught up in the college environment, especially at a Big Ten school. I was going out too much. I was partying. I lost focus on my goals. My goal was to get into college, to use academics and athletics to go to any school I wanted. And then when I got to campus, I didn't reset that goal. I think I thought that I was going to be a landscape architect. I got to school and I realized, or I was going to go into business. And I got to school and I realized through my athletic academic advisor that you're a scholarship athlete in a D1 program, and those things you're not going to have time for. So you're going to have to find a different career path. Instead of being the hard-nosed person I probably should have been and said, I'm going to make it work anyway, which I had teammates like Eric Tannenbaum, Ryan Bertine, Steve Luke that did some of those really rigorous academic programs. I didn't take and stay steadfast in what I wanted to do because it wasn't concrete yet. So I got lost, and I got really lost. And I was partying 6 nights a week. I was showing up to morning workouts, definitely still intoxicated from the night before. I was making all the mistakes that a lot of young college athletes make, and probably the epitome of it. My goal was to be the most popular guy on campus. It wasn't to be a national champ. My coaches knew this. They sat me down a lot. They had a lot of hard conversations with me. I didn't respond. I thought I would respond. I didn't respond. What really made me respond was my junior year. I got really sick. I had my backup, Rob Salaver, Bandana Training. Guy's a world-class trainer now. He's sponsored by Nike. Check him out. Plug for you, Rob. I got really sick. I lost 4-2 match to Bubba Jenkins, and then the next day I had a wrestle-off, and it was the week of Big Tens. My mind was so concerned with the fact that I had a wrestle-off, not how I was going to perform in that wrestle-off, that I lost. And I lost everything I thought was important to me. And I say everything I thought was important to me because the reality was I wasn't putting the energy into something that if it really is that important, you need to. And so I watched that next weekend, Rob wrestle at the Big Tens. I was intoxicated in the stand. And the next day, my mindset shifted. I went into practice, and I had my singlet on backwards. I had my headgear upside down, and I just didn't care. And I did not care. And one of my teammates, Ty Todd, yelled at me. He goes, "Why are you here? What are you doing?" And I remember running around the circle, being pretty pissed off, wondering the same thing. But it made me question myself. It made me dig deep in the next hour. And I had a practice match, a singlet match, with Josh Torella that day. It was 2 weeks before he made the NCAA finals. I'd never beaten him in a challenge match, in a wrestle-off. That day we went to double overtime, and I don't remember if he won or if I won. But I had a change in myself where I knew at that moment I had to help Josh prepare for that tournament. And so at that moment, for the first time in 3 years, I was living for something bigger than myself. And through that process, I had someone behind me this whole time that believed in me no matter the mistakes I was making. And he was there through unconditional love, and that was Mark Torella. And Mark had started helping coach our program my junior year, that same year, and he believed in me. Throughout me being ineligible, whatever, he was always there. He was asking me to come in for extra workouts. He believed in the potential that I had as a person and as an athlete. When Josh made the NCAA finals, won in the semifinals, I believe he upset. I don't know who it was. I don't think it was Dustin Schlater, but Mark walked up the stands in NCAAs, and he came right to me, shook my hand, he said, "Thank you." And that thank you was because I had dedicated the last 2 weeks at least, and probably more, to help Josh get ready. That changed my life. I realized I needed to be there. I had the potential to be sitting in that to be on that mat as well. Completely rededicated myself. I gave up drinking. I ate all organic. I trained right. I took care of my body. I went from being ineligible with a 0.6 to having a 4.0 and being the best student in class, the only one going to office hours and sitting in the front of the room. And there's two things that I believe did that. One is Mark believing in me and being that consistency of a coach that's a good coach that you know they've got your back and they're going to go to war for you. And it was a quiet consistency, though. It was just there. And then number two is the fact that then I had a goal. I had a real goal to work towards. And that was an academic goal. I knew what I wanted to do with education. And it was an athletic goal. And so they saved my life. I have a couple of teammates and a couple of friends from college that have passed away since because they didn't have the same opportunity to have their life saved that I did. And and that's why I'm here. And I think we talked about it over the weekend a little bit. Like a lot of our staff at Be the Streets have a same story where they were lost and they had one chance, and somebody was there in their life, or that chance was there in their life, that was able to pull them out. And so I think that we're really fortunate with our organization. We've got 27 full-time staff, and the majority of us feel really connected to having been lost at some point and having had wrestling pull us out of it.